Welcome to the Intuitive Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Rafferty, medical doctor, PhD, acupuncturist, and intuitive energetic healer. And I'm here to bring you on a journey of holistic healing that explores the science of the physical body combined with mental and emotional well-being, energetic and spiritual health. And it is an absolute pleasure to have Laura Murphy back on the pod. Laura, it is such a gift to have you with us. Thank you so much for coming on to chat to us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
When you and I get together, there's just this buzz that moves between the two of us. I always just feel like the energy is always excitable, and I just was so looking forward to talking to you today. So thank you so much for being here. So today, Laura and I are going to be exploring the Omen Days tradition. So just to give you a little bit of background about how I found this tradition with Laura. So obviously I started following Laura some time ago, and your Instagram is just so empowering. Your activism, your connection to the land and the Celtic and Druidic ways. I just absolutely find all of your work just so inspiring. It's so beautiful. And you've such an elegant way of speaking and communicating. And that's obviously one of your gifts that you bring to this world. We talked about this in our last pod episode. But last year, I was intrigued. In the run-up to Christmas time, Laura started posting about Omen Days. And my mind was blown. Even talking about it now, my spirit tingles all over my body are like, they're just electric, even talking about it. I felt so drawn to take part in this journey with you last year. And it was such a beautiful experience, first of all. And we're going to talk about what the Omen Days is and everything that comes along with that. But what blew my mind was the experience of the Omen Days, how it translated into premonitions for the year ahead. And as we are coming up on the end of 2025, and I looked back through the journey I went on with the Omen Days during the 12 days that we'll discuss now, and the premonitions of what came afterwards corresponding to each of the months of the year, my mind was blown. So I had to have this discussion with you. I just feel you are one of these conduits, these channels for informing people about the Omen Days. And I would love if we could get stuck into just having a bit of a chat around what it actually is. So can you give us a little download there on what the Omen Days is?
Yeah, sure. I discovered the Omen Days, I think, is it maybe 6 years now? I happened upon a blog post by the amazing Kathleen Matthews. And it was just a lovely little kind of a explanation on what virtually this lost practice was for our Celtic ancestors. And it seems to have been a practice that was inherent in our pagan ways across the Celtic Isles, so Scotland, England, and Ireland. And actually, even as I do more research, it seems to be a European-wide thing. But the Omen Days is an ancient Celtic practice that takes place during the 12 days after Christmas. And it's a time that our ancestors understood as being outside of ordinary time. In Irish, this period is called Idir Gá Nullig, so that means between two Christmases. So in Ireland, we celebrate a second Christmas on the 6th of January, and this also happens to be the day of the Epiphany celebrated in Christianity, and I don't think that's an accident. But it's in the liminality where the Druids drew their magic from. And the Omen Days is liminal on a number of fronts. So it's liminal because it also is the reckoning of the solar year, the solar calendar, and the lunar calendar. So if we're trying to measure time, the solar calendar and the lunar calendars don't add up, so they don't even out. So we have a period of 12 days that is outside of the Gregorian calendar. So this is a time out of time between lunar and solar time, also the Gregorian calendar, and the calendar that our ancestors would have used, which is the cycles of nature. So it's a really interesting liminal space. And from engaging in this time over the course of 5 years, the magic is just, it's ineffable. And it's like I said on my reel last year, you really have to experience it to understand it. Like the level of synchronicities that are there, the level of interweaving with nature. But basically, from the 26th of December to the 6th, the 12 days after Christmas, you watch for a sign. And on every day, you will get an omen. And each omen on each of these days corresponds to the month ahead. So you basically have a really good guide or feeling or sense of how the 12 months ahead are going to unfold. But this is where the magic kind of becomes a little bit ineffable and experiential. It's like, it's not straightforward prediction, in my opinion. It's not stereotypical fortune telling. That's actually the least of it. It seems to be this relational practice. It seems to be weaving consciousness with creation. It seems to be prophecy, not in the sense of prediction, but prophecy in the sense of relating with nature and joining in the act of becoming. And as we speak more about our experiences, that will make more sense. That might be a little bit intangible now, but I just have this sense that through the Omen Days activities for the last number of years, destiny is a tale of two halves. And I think there's a part of destiny that is pre-written or determined, but there is also a part where we can create or co-create with nature from a space of presence and from a space of reverence with nature. And that echoes quantum physics in the idea of possibilities, and that there are probably multiple timelines that are available to us, and we can actualize a possibility depending on where our consciousness can observe a potential and collapsing into a reality.
Oh my God. I'm literally writing a million notes because I'm even putting things together in my mind as you're speaking. Because there was so many parts of even just that introduction there that just resonated so deeply with me. So, I just love this kind of journey that you were talking about with the lunar cycles and the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar having this extra random 12 days. But in fact, they were never random, really, were they? Like, if you actually think about our connection to the land, connection to the womb, menstrual cycles are 28 days. The lunar cycles are 28 days, but when the Gregorian calendar came in, that actually knocked out this 28-day cycle and disconnected us essentially from these beautiful cyclical patterns of the womb and of connection to the moon, and the land, essentially.
Exactly.
And it's fascinating because on this journey, when I speak to people about their womb, and obviously working as a healer, a womb healer, I always find it fascinating because the protocols I send out afterwards are to do with 13 moon cycles. So I always talk about the 28-day 13 lunar cycles that come afterwards, not the year that comes after the healing.
Amazing.
And what's even wilder is when I talk about the energetics of the womb space, I always speak about the sacral chakra being our relational energy center. So it's all about community and how you engage within the community setting. And even to build on that even further, it's the creative center. So the womb, obviously, this beautiful energy that exists there, you can create life literally like a human being, but you can create your destiny from that space. So I love all of these things weaving together with this journey that essentially you've introduced as this kind of time of conception and creation.
Yeah.
I just love it.
It's mind blowing, and that's why I have, like, it's no surprise to me that you were like born to be a part of these Omen days because of your uh, deep intrinsic connection to the feminine, what you were doing with womb healing. You're helping so many women on their fertility journeys all around conception. And that healing journey, really the fundamental place of power or healing is the land itself before it's within any of us. And this is what these Omen days is revealing, is the deep intrinsic connection between land, our understanding of time and our move from linear time into cyclical time, and our collective healing of womb trauma and of the trauma of patriarchy and the omission of the feminine in general. And there are so many magical revelations I've had. Each year gives me another revelation. And it's a blessing in a way that I was sick really for the last 5 or 6 years each time, because it gave me the level of stillness required and the level of presence to deeply observe what these revelations wanted to tell. And one of the first amazing things was the connection I saw between our ancient site, our ancient sacred site, Newgrange, and the Omen days. So Newgrange is a site, a 5,000-year-old site that was built to harness the light of the rising sun on winter solstice. So after the deepest dark, the beam of light comes over the horizon and straight into Brúna Bóinne, which is the Irish word for Newgrange. And that can be translated from Irish as womb of Bowen, Bowen being our goddess, our great feminine goddess in Ireland. And so the chamber itself was actually built to mirror the shape of the female reproductive system. So it's a mound, like that reflects the swelling belly, and then there's a vulva-like chamber and birth canal, and then it opens out into a cross shape, which is like the ovaries. And so the beam of the sun comes and penetrates as the lingam of the god Dagda, penetrates into the womb of Bowen at that solstice point, so that a conception of light can happen. And that in our mythology is the day that our god of love, Engus, was conceived, through this beam of Dagda's light penetrating the womb of Bowen. And what the really fascinating thing, and this is a big key to one of the revelations, and it was facilitated by an artist friend of mine called Sheila Moylan, and she discovered that the rock art in Newgrange can be plotted, and she used some software to understand this, is actually plotted on the seed of life geometry. So that connects in. So obviously we know the Newgrange was traditionally seen by archaeologists and experts as a tomb and not a womb. But as evidence emerges, it's becoming ever clearer that it was predominantly a womb, or maybe a womb and tomb at the same time, death and rebirth at the same time. But this seed of life geometry that the rock art is overlaid on is key, because the seed of life, when sperm and an egg, when they fuse, that moment, then the cells start to split. When a baby is conceived, the cells split into 2, 4, and 16. And as you know, that creates the seed of life geometry. So our ancestors 5,000 years ago understood the mechanisms and the geometry of conception and creation, and enshrined it in our most sacred monument that somehow through this feat of engineering captures 5,000 years later, captures the light of the rising sun at solstice to ritually enact this conception of the sun with the land to create love. So how that relates to the Omen days then is that, if the Omen days, the 12 days of Christmas begin on the 26th of December, well, really the beginning of the process is the darkest night. So is that night of the 20th, when the night is the deepest dark. And that first ray of sun after the deepest dark is the most important sacred moment of the whole year, because that is the rebirth of light. So then the name for solstice in Irish is the sun stands still. So that we have 3 days of stillness after the conception, and that's the 21st to the 25th. And then on the 25th, there's the rebirth. And that's a day we all know is Christmas. So that seems to have been co-opted by the Catholic Church to be the birth of Christ, because it's not mentioned anywhere in the Bible what date he was actually born. It so happens to be the 25th. And then on the 26th, we have this imprint of the seed of life, the embryonic process, the cell becoming, the cell dividing and becoming the embryo. That process takes 12 days. So that imprint of creation is in that nonlinear time space of the 26th to the 6th. And it ends then on the 6th, which in Christianity is the epiphany, or the revelation of the child as Christ, as being of the light and of Christ consciousness. So that's where my poetic mind has traced, or my poetic heart, to be more precise, or our womb has perceived the origins or the reason for this magic. Because and maybe you can speak into this, it's like I don't know one person that's done the Omen days that hasn't this level of enthusiasm that you and I have, or this level of awe, or this level of, because the omens are all like precise. They are precise beyond any reason or logic, or so. Yeah, and maybe I'll let you speak into that.
Oh my God. Well, there's so many things. I'm literally putting all these things together in my mind as you're speaking as well. That's why I love these chats. Because, so there's a couple of things just before I talk into the omens as well. I'd love, there's so much for us to chat about, but I just wanted to touch on some of these beautiful things that you'd mentioned previously. So, first of all, from a spiritual perspective, I find this kind of synergy between the tomb and the womb to be so significant. And, you know, when I started doing this work, I used to think to myself, God, when I was doing womb healing, I was helping a lot of, it's almost like the little souls that didn't feel safe to move back to the light are sometimes still trapped in the wombs of the women that I work with. And almost like creating space to allow new light and new life to come in. It's important to be this kind of bridge or this guide to allow those souls to move back to the light. And I found it fascinating because I was seeing a lot of women at the time that had had significant losses of babies, of pregnancies, of all different stages of this journey. And I thought a lot to myself, I was like, this is really interesting. Am I working as a death doula here? You know? But later on the journey, because I was actually calling in light as well, I did a shamanic journey and I was like, what is the synergy between me helping wombs heal from loss and actually assisting the souls back to the light and the calling in of new souls from the light and into the womb? And my guide said at the time, they're like, oh, well, you're a bridge of light. You help souls come and go. So it's so fascinating to me because I think when I do womb healing on some women that have had significant loss within the lineage, there are souls that move through my body, like tens, hundreds of souls that are trapped within the lineage. And I can feel the skeletons, I can feel the tissue moving through my body, the energy of grief and sadness, and all of it moves through me to help to heal the womb. I just become a channel for all of this energy. Especially when I visit certain sites as well, like I get intense pain in my body as the souls begin to move. But it's so wild because, isn't it so incredible to think that some of these losses were so desperately wanted that actually the womb does essentially become a tomb because the energy has been trapped within there as well. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does on so many levels. And, I work with the survivors of mother and baby homes and Magdalene laundries, and you've had some work with that as well.
Yes.
The collective wound in Ireland is so intrinsically linked to, life,
Yeah.
death, so interwoven and not in a way that's honored. So much death and so much secrecy in Ireland. If a woman brought life into the world under the wrong so-called circumstances, and there's been no healing or very little healing because it all had to be brushed under the carpet because there was so much shame and danger associated with bringing all of this into the light. But, from a shamanic or from a spiritual perspective, death is what gives way to new life. If we don't have the process of winter, of death, life or spring can't come forth. And that's mythologized in our tradition as the Cailleach, the hag of winter. The old crone gives way or transforms to Bridget, the new light, the light of rebirth. But in the deeper esoteric levels of work that I do on that collective trauma of the womb space, I work very much with the womb of the Cailleach. So I will often surrender into the womb of the Cailleach for my own healing, or I will bring clients into the womb of the Cailleach. And the Cailleach, sometimes we associate her with destruction and ugliness and death, and she can be that, but she's very much showing up in Ireland, or even within the diaspora, as this womb of like rose quartz light and warmth that you can surrender into for a death process or for a grieving process or for a letting go process. And the womb of the Cailleach is she's just holding you in her waters or in her safety, in her womb, as you transform into the new life that's to come. And that's when it's almost like the womb then transforms into the womb of Bowen and new life begins. But all of that work on the shamanic level for me is very much as you've described. It's if we're working with birth, or we're working with bringing through new life, or we're working with creation, that means we work with the dark and we work to metabolize grief. We work to allow grief to move through. And that's what the whole solstice mystery was in Ireland. It was the darkest night, the deep dark. And the first light that comes after that dark is the alchemical point of Imbas Forosnai, divine conception, divine illumination, divine creation.
Oh, I love that. And even if you think about the way the menstrual cycle even works. So I love that you're talking about this midpoint of the winter, of the dark, when kind of the peak of darkness is there. It's almost like, ovulation takes place at the midpoint of this cycle. And it's so wild in so many ways, because what I tend to say when I'm working with my clients is, as you move through that luteal phase, usually I don't recommend testing until you're 12 days in. So, and usually what we see is if there's no embryo at that point, the womb begins to shed. So there's this shedding, there's this loss that goes on. And it's almost like we've lost touch with honoring the bleed, essentially, but the bleed makes way for a new cycle. That shedding, that loss makes way for a new cycle so that you can actually build back up again in order to allow the body to kind of receive
Yeah,
this energy of light.
yeah.
And what's fascinating is now, from a scientific perspective, they've captured the moment of conception under a microscope, and there's a burst of light. And I find that fascinating. And when I work with souls that are waiting to come in for the women and the couples I work with, I can just feel this light move down through my body, and the soul moves down and it moves out of my heart and into the womb. And it's assisted by loads of different guides, but one of them is the Archangel Gabriel. And you and I touched base this week, and we were talking about really significant stuff within kind of the Irish history of kind of trauma within the womb space and the womb of the Irish land. And your message came back to me on the day of Archangel Gabriel, and I was like, this is so significant. Can you tell us a little bit about that? There's so many things to explore. We'll definitely get to the Omen days in a moment, but tell us a little bit about that.
Totally, this is all connected, so definitely go with the flow. Yeah, it was the 8th of December. We were messaging and trying to organize for this day. And I was like, I felt guilty because I've been having a crazy few weeks and I didn't get back to you. And there was a week of a delay in response and I was so guilty. And then I was like, oh, hold on, this is the 8th of December. It was meant to be today because Angel Gabriel is probably like, that's who I'm connected with the most, and Michael. And Gabriel is the angel who informed Mother Mary that she was with child. She was going to be the mother of Christ. And then me remembering the work that you do, I'm like, oh, Angel Gabriel is so with us. And I send you the song by Lamb, Gabriel. And but there is, so in Ireland, the Catholic Church is responsible for so much trauma, the Magdalene Laundries, all of that. And while they revered Mother Mary, they very much relegated her as an intermediary of God, and she was a mother without engaging in the creative process. So the Catholic Church made that conception a sin, and that it didn't actually happen for Mother Mary. And that's another esoteric conversation, but that creation point was made to be bad or bypassed or suppressed within our religion that we adopted or that was imposed upon us. But the Irish people always remained so connected to Mother Mary, such a deep reverence and honoring. And I am not, I do not, do not consider myself a part of the Catholic Church anymore, but I am deeply connected to the mysteries of Christ, of Jesus, of Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, as my mom is, as my granddad were. And the presence of the archangels, the Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel, like they drew them, or the art and the illuminated manuscripts of the medieval monks very much focused on the archangel energy. And I think we had an understanding or a sense of them in pagan Ireland as well. We just didn't have the same language. And I know the Michael and Mary lines, for example, the ley lines in England can be compared to what we now call the Lou and the Bridget lines in Ireland. So there's a connection between Lou, possibly, and Archangel Michael. But I think Archangel Gabriel and Mother Mary and the mysteries of Jesus and the birth of Jesus are all interwoven with the Omen days and with the understanding of life, death, and rebirth that we have had in ancient Ireland. And I saw another picture that was just really recently released of that moment of conception. And it was a new image captured by scientists. And there was this wave, you could see the energetic wave. And in it, there was a triple spiral.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I only posted that on my Instagram 2 days ago. And I was like, look at the spiral.
And the spiral, so when when Dagda's beam of light comes down the vulva of Bruna Boyna, it illuminates the triple spiral within the chamber, in the womb. And my new sense of what that triple spiral means is, on one level, there's probably many layers, is what you've been speaking about in your shamanic healing work. Is one spiral is for death, one spiral is for rebirth, and then the third state that arises from the merging of the two is birth. So it's like, yeah, so many mysteries interwoven.
It's just absolutely magic. And so all of these spirals are actually carved on the stones at Newgrange as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it's so fascinating? Like, because we didn't have microscopes back in the day when these giant stones are being carved. And now that we have the scientific methods to look under the microscope at like cellular detail, we're seeing these patterns and waveforms linked to like this seed of life, the tree of life, all of these beautiful sacred geometric patterns. These were all just part of ancient tradition. I just think it's amazing.
They had non-ordinary ways of knowing that we have disregarded because of our Cartesian way and our focus that was imposed on us on rationality and logic at the expense of intuition. But that creation point mirrors the process of divine illumination that our ancestors had, which we spoke about before, Imbas Forosnai. So Imbas Forosnai arises from the dark. It is the first spark of illumination that comes from the dark. So it again, it's this echo of the creation point from the dark. And so our ancestors used to go into dark, and this is another revelation that came from the few years of Omen days. So Imbas, it's written in a few medieval manuscripts that the medieval monks used to go into a cell or a dark chamber for 3 days with sensory deprivation and no food, no light, no sound, and go into the deepest dark and then wait for this goddess to give the spark of illumination, which would give the gift of prophecy, of higher truth, wisdom, and healing. And then they would come out, and spontaneous poetry that is encoded with this higher wisdom would be offered to the king, so the king could lead in right relationship with the people and the land. So the interesting thing is that cell in Irish is kale, and kale in one of the dictionaries, and this is Regina de Burca, who comes along every year with her Irish tarot cards for the Omen days. She discovered this, that an Irish word for omen is Céal Mhuine or Céal Mhuine. So it's cell and prophecy together in two words, or cell and omen. And so that there's two tangents from that then. It's like, okay, the Omen days is so intrinsically connected to that process of Imbas Forosnai, of the dark and the light, but also the word cell and then the process of cell division that is akin to it as well. So Regina then, I think 2 or 3 years ago, put forward the possibility of reclaiming these days in our Irish language. And so we've called them, since then, we've called them Law Vana. So the Omen days. And I know it's a singular law, but we're speaking of a singular time out of time. So that's why we've landed on that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. That's why these conversations are so important, because, everybody gets these beautiful, intuitive downloads of information. And then if all of us are wandering around and not actually sharing this wisdom with each other, like it's hard to weave all the pieces together, because the medicine that runs through people is so unique. So you really do need this sense of community that we spoke about at the very start in order to weave the wisdom together. So you actually create this beautiful tapestry. So that all the pieces land. Like, even as we speak here now, within this conversation, I'm gaining more and more insight into my soul's purpose. And it makes more and more sense to me as we have these beautiful discussions that were probably had within a community setting.
Yeah.
But it's so tricky because we're so disconnected from these elements in so many ways today, that actually the conversations and the wisdom isn't being shared in the same ways as it used to be. Would you agree?
That is such an important point that you've landed on, and I'm really grateful that you did, because the Omen days feels to be like a very significant act of decolonization, or a very significant act of reclamation of the feminine, of indigenous practices. And it's my guidance all throughout the years was to not monetize this, to not put this in the realm of capitalism, to not even take ownership, or to, it's a very sacred thing. I saw myself as more of a container holder or a midwife, but it was very much a community process. It was very much a collective rebirthing and remembering. And I knew from the very first year that this was very connected to my dawn, which was all around the reviving or the remembering of Imbas Forosnai, and that it was a big part of my service. And I showed up every year to the best of my capacity, even in deep incapacitation, to bring forth what I could every year, to share whatever knowledge I had freely online, and to open a space for community. And the magic that arose from that, the people that join every year are the most magical, aligned Anamkaras, soul friends from all around the world. And I have a lot of activity in different things on my social media. It's a space for activism and genocide awareness and mother and baby homes and poetry and creativity. But the biggest swell, the groundswell for me, always happens on the Omen days. And the level of synchronicities, the level of similarities between signs on a given day. So many people in the community will all share our omens in our stories, and we can tag, or even posts and just hashtag Omen days. And then we can actually track other people's omens as well. And we find that there is a collective unity, or one person's omen could actually shed light on what's come up for us. And there's also this collective imbus. So, for example, Regina's input, your input last year, because Regina came along every year and she'd choose a tarot card in Irish for each day for the collective. And then you came last year and just organically started to sharing your visions, which is very much connected to our process of imbus that our poets had. It was the visions that they would have. And your visions, like on the collective, what they predicted collectively in terms of global events and happenings and collective trauma and collective healing, was massive. So it's a collective remembering of these ways and of this. Because the other thing is, I thought long and hard about doing Omen days in the midst of genocides and of so much suffering, and the clear guidance was, this isn't a frivolous thing. This is a real reclamation of power.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I love that. Yeah, it's so on point. And I would absolutely love to explore what our omens were for this year and how they came through, like you were saying, these kind of prophecies that came through last year, and how we both went on this beautiful synergistic journey, and with these gorgeous tarot that had been created as well. It was just magic. But before we do that, I suppose it would be really great to give the listeners maybe an idea of how do they do this? Like, what is an an Omen Day prophecy? What do we look out for with regard to the omens? What date does it specifically start, and how can we go on the journey?
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about actually what came up for us this year
Yeah.
after the adventure of last year's Omen Days. Does that sound
That
okay?
sounds magic. Yeah. Well, I would say that the first day to tune in would definitely be the 20th. So the darkest night. Don't have to do anything. Just tune into that moment as a moment of creation. Tune in whatever way feels good on solstice and celebrate it, or go into the room of the Kyloch. If there's anything you wish to let go from the previous year, just very gently surrender and be in a yin space in those days, knowing, setting the intention that you will be working with the imprint of creation in the 12 days after Christmas. Then on the 23rd, last year, I discovered that there is actually a day in Celtic folk memory on the 23rd that's called the Feast of Potentials, or the Nameless Day. And I've tried to research a bit, and it's a bit scattered, but what I could find was that so we have a magical year in a day in Irish mythology, and it's all, magic predictions happen in a year in a day, or fairy tales have a year in a day. So it's the day in the year in the day is said to be this nameless day, and that comes from the one day that's left over after 12 months of 28 days. But what I sense that it is it's in the time that the sun stands still. So it's in that time between conception and birth. It's that quantum plane of possibilities, deep stillness. So I would very much focus in that day in a very deep space of surrender and stillness, because that is the point on a quantum level from which all possibilities can arise. And then when something is observed, it changes the nature of a waveform, or it changes the nature of a possibility. So if you literally sit in that day, the 23rd, observing what is going to be your highest timeline, your highest potential, your highest destiny, and just focus your heart wisdom on that. That's all you have to do for that day. And celebrate the 24th and the 25th with some reverence and intention on the birth of light and of Jesus and Angus and whatever framework you put on it. And then get yourself ready then for the 26th, because the 12 days begins on the 26th. You will look for your first omen on St. Stephen's Day on the 26th. So I always recommend that you don't have an energy of frantically searching. It's not a yang energy. It's a very much an energy of trust and surrender, and a knowing that nature or the universe or destiny is going to give you a sign on that day. So it's about waiting for the sign. But what can make it so magic is if you plan a walk in nature, if you go to a river, if you go to a sacred site, because the birds, like the magic, when you really connect with nature, the magic that can unfold is incredible. And so I like to record the omens if I can on my phone and video whatever I see. Or I can write it down and, write it roughly on notes, and then make space every evening to just decide what the omen is, because the chances are you'll see a few and they could all be telling a story, or you'll see one big one that you will know that's just it. And then at the end of every night, I post my omens on a story, and then I put some corresponding music, which is amazing because the music has so often been a part of the unfolding of that month as well. So be very careful of what you choose, because I feel like the Omen Days is part predestined, but part possibilities that you can co-create what's happening. So yeah, and don't be afraid of this is where a balancing act happens as well. So okay, what happens if we see an unfavorable omen? Do we bypass it and put our head in the sand? So what I try to do is set my intention for the highest possible timeline in a month. not to put my head in the sand if I get an unfavorable omen. But if I do get an unfavorable omen, not to bypass it, but how can I interpret it so that it would be the highest possible timeline that is available to me? So you're not going into fantasy land, you're not going into a fear-based thing, because ultimately everything happens for a reason. And especially if you're setting the intention for the highest timeline, even if it's a sting for that month, it can obviously be for your highest good. And so then, yeah, other people then will also be sharing their stories, and they'll be posting and tagging the Omen days. And it's the sense of community around it is so beautiful. Like there's no, it's all free, it's all voluntary. It's a real heart connection. And then you will also post your visions that you get. I'm not sure if Regina has the capacity or time to do her cards this year, but somebody will make sure that the Irish tarot cards are on if Regina can or can't. I hope she does. She's so magic. But obviously it's a really busy time for everybody. And then just repeat that process for the 12 days. And if you're really busy, which we all are around that time, you can literally pick from an oracle deck at the end of your day. If you haven't seen an omen, if you've been too busy, and that happens to me often. And even those omens are incredibly accurate. So whatever happens in that time frame happens for a reason. And then at the end of so it's very important at the end of the 12 days, because what I've called on Rune More, which is the big secret of the Omen days, happens. And the big secret of the Omen days is what you've spoken about earlier, the 13th moon. So the 13th moon is what happens on the 12th day. And that's the 6th of January, which is the Epiphany, which is when the three magi, the three wise men, visited the Christ child with their gifts. And it's women's little Christmas. But it's on that day that the revelation for the whole year ahead can happen, because you can synthesize all of the 12 months. And sometimes, like last year, I was given a big download, like a poetic inspiration, prophecy for the year ahead and what my role was, and for the collective as well. So that's all available to you on the 13th moon. And I always set that night aside to be in deep reverence for the birth of Christ consciousness and the birth of light and the epiphany and the manifestation, because epiphany means revelation, it means manifestation. So the 13th moon on the 6th of January. And it's great because in Ireland, women can rest on that day. That was the day traditionally set aside for women to do nothing and to be looked after. So make sure whoever's around can give you the space on that day. And if you're a man, then it's your inner feminine who will take the day off. So I don't know who's going to keep the show on the road if the inner feminine will.
Yeah, exactly. The place will fall asunder.
We'll have our omens and we'll have our revelations. So it'll be grand.
Oh, Laura, I love that. Because even I'm just having all these flashbacks to doing the Omen days last year. And obviously, and I've spoken about it on the pod before, my journey as a gay man, I completely rejected the Catholic Church, but also these beautiful wisdom teachers and ascended masters, because they were wrapped up in all of that, they went out the window for a lot of my life until I went on a journey with spirituality and began connecting with all these beautiful guides, you know, and teasing out the teachings of the Catholic Church from the energy of Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary and Yeshua and this beautiful energy of the Christ consciousness. And, you know, it's all just it's been such a pivotal part of my journey, and it's the energy that I use in my healings. And it's just so powerful, but I'd forgotten a lot of the stories around it. So I'll never forget, on the day of the Epiphany, my vision for that morning was of the three wise men on camels pointing to the North Star. And I remember I put that up online and I texted you. I was like, this is mad. And you're like, oh my God, Tony, this is literally what this day represents. So it was do you know when you have no understanding of some of this stuff, but you have the vision around it, it kind of validates in your mind,
Yeah.
oh God, this is so real. What's happening here? Which is so, so cool. And I think the whole experience last year was just magic. Like, and I suppose just before we get stuck into kind of what kind of came up for us last year, when people go out looking or they're in the presence, like this omen could literally be a snowdrop. It could literally be a bird. It could just be a sign that they receive that resonates deep in their soul about what that the connection to that day and the associated month might feel like them for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the druids were, they looked to nature for omens and for oracles or for predictions on weather and things, and there is this relational space that if you have intention, the birds will show up in a very magical way. And birds were carriers of messages, especially all animals, but specifically birds in our tradition. So it could be the water, it could be the sea in a specific way, it could be the clouds, but nature will respond. And the more open-hearted and trusting you are, the more available the magic is to you.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And so each day that you have an experience, whatever day within those 12 days, they correspond then to the 12 months of the year, isn't it?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So day one is January's prophecy. Day two is February's prophecy. And you can kind of go through each of these kind of 12 days of your journey and then document it all so that when you start moving through the year, you can see, well, what happened in for my January predictions, February
Yeah.
predictions, and so on.
And you can use them. I use them as guides. You know, I there was the year before last, there was 1 month that because of whatever it said, I knew that there was an availability of abundance and Bridget's energy of manifestation. So I very deliberately chose that month to do a big piece of fundraising to with two sisters, Tara Brading and Aoife Loden, to raise funds to help a family evacuate from Gaza. And that generated, like, that really had loads of miracle energy attached to it that we still can't trace back. But I think that the GoFundMe ended up raising like 250,000.
Wow.
Yeah, but all that was guided by the timing and yes, it was the availability of Bridget's miracle energy, and we deliberately encoded that into the offering of our Radical Love for Gaza offering. We literally encoded the miracle energy of Bridget, and then this happened that we still kind of can't fully explain it. Just yeah, so and also I was able to be at the right place at the right time as well for so many different things. The Omen days predicted the meeting of my beloved, his name, the month, and the place that would be the place that would spark our meeting. Like it's, yeah, so I would, it's not just for fun. You can proactively interact and be guided by the omens in a specific month for to know kind of to what to maybe be mindful of or where the opportunities may lie.
Do you know, that's so interesting because my March omens this year were all about Rama and Sita, divine union and sacred soul connection. That's the month that my beautiful soulmate and I moved in together. So everything definitely aligned. And it actually blew my mind. Every single month when I'd look at what was coming for the month ahead, I was like, oh my God, this is completely linked. And that day, and this is what's so beautiful in so many ways, like what you were saying, because I love how you were reposting everybody's stories that had tagged you that day, because it meant that you kind of got this real snapshot for these little moments of a whole collective vision in a lot of ways too. So, I found that fascinating because when I put up my divine soul union, like I pulled an oracle card every day, then I went into deep meditation and I do a lot of mantra practice. to receive my visions during that really deep meditative state.
Mm.
So I know not everybody's going to approach the Omen days like this, but from a shamanic perspective, when I journey, and I don't need to necessarily use the drum, I just need to go inward to journey inside my heart and my mind, essentially. But I just spent about an hour and a half every morning. I just dedicated my time to sit and actually just receive visions and guidance for the year that was going to come. And so some of those kind of premonitions, I suppose, were linked to my own life. And then I got very clear messages about this is what will happen collectively. So, I was typing all these things up. I put loads of stories up every day for the 12 days, and I have them as a highlight on my Instagram reel on the Intuitive Medic Instagram. And it was so crazy because I was putting stuff up going, this is bonkers. Like, are people going to think I'm an absolute loony bin here? But it was fascinating because every time people started messaging me through the year going, every time I start a new month, I go on to look at what your predictions are for the year, for this month ahead. What premonition did you come up with? Because it was wild. Because do you remember when all the stuff started happening? There was a lot going on at the beginning of the year with regard to America going on fire, which it literally did, and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, even the month in which the new presidential election would happen, like the predictions also linked in with some of the pilgrimages. They were just divine downloads that I needed to go on pilgrimage. So I went, and it was only when I was there and I started looking through the Omen days, I was like, oh my God, this is literally the exact month when I knew that I had to work with the energetics of Mary Magdalene in southern France. And we hiked out to see the Cave of Eggs and received all these beautiful downloads. It was just wild. And then obviously some of the stuff I couldn't put up on Instagram because it was to do with actually circumstances that arose in some of the healings of my practice. When I met specific types of guides, or when I met specific types of energy that had been predicted from earlier in that year, which actually, like what you say, which was so on point. It's not necessarily all light. There was definitely a shadow element to aspects of the year. And funnily enough, starting out the year, there was a part of me that was like, this is going to be interesting to see what this is going to bring here, And it's funny how it manifested in that month, because some of the stuff wasn't really as bad as I had thought, but I learned a lesson around the specific energy, if that makes sense. So that was really, really interesting. But I remember, like, I really set the intention the night before. Like you say, I went into deep shamanic ceremony. I called in the Kyloch, and I had, down at the Hill of Tara, there's this beautiful artist man that he has one of these. Oh my God, his pictures are beautiful. And I went up there prior to starting the Omen days, and I actually was so drawn to this beautiful image he'd created of the Kyloch. So I got it and I put her on my altar before we went into the Omen days. So the night before, I kind of went into this deep energetic space where I called in all of my guides and all of the beautiful energetics of the guides that I work with. And I was like, reveal to me what's going to happen this over the next 12 days. And then every day I'd spend an hour or two in deep contemplation and meditation to receive the messages and the visions. And then I'd spend a wee while putting them all up online. I literally just isolated myself away and went on this beautiful journey for the whole time. I didn't really see anybody. I can be a devil. When you're on your soul's call and the work nourishes you so much, I'm a devil for overworking.
Me too.
So when I actually did that, it was purely a time of like going inward to do this work. And when I came out the other side, I had an amazing ceremony the night that it finished. And I had all these beautiful acorns, and I planted all these acorns. I put intention into each of them based on the visions that I'd had throughout the whole period. And they began to grow in the spring. And it's so funny because there was months between them sprouting. like months and
Really?
months. And the ones that sprouted first linked to the downloads I had about some of the stuff. It was literally the seed was germinating
Oh,
with the energy of the intention.
wow.
But there was months between them germinating. And it was in complete association with what was actually happening in my life and what was actually coming to fruition. It was wild.
Amazing, because I've just read science recently that has proven that intention have impact on seed germination. Now, I think the Lakota tribe and indigenous tribes had all this knowledge anyway, but now it's been tested that intention impacts seed germination, which of course links back to the imprint of creation and the embryo. I didn't know any of that, Tony. That's
It's
amazing.
fascinating, isn't it? Yeah,
It
absolutely
is.
fascinating. And I remember, like, and interestingly, some of the seeds or some of the acorns didn't germinate. And I was like, what is going on? When I looked back, they were essentially linked to plans or intentions I'd had at the time, but the universe had greater,
Yes.
obviously, direction with some of the stuff. So I know now that actually my life's path and the journey I'm being brought on, although there is a variation of some of these things happening, it wasn't the intention I put into that acorn. So I, so they didn't germinate.
I'm so
Isn't that
glad you
mad?
mentioned that, because that's probably, and I didn't remember to say it, but that's key. That my journey with illness had me organically in this space of surrender. But it's so important with the Omen days that you have, okay, an intention. You can have an intention, but the highest intention should be to align your will with divine will, or your will with nature, your will with the universe, and surrender into that. I mean, if it's from your deepest heart's desire, you can be sure that your intention is aligned with the divine will. But sometimes intention can, unbeknownst to us, come from wounding or ego, you know. So the
Mm.
safest thing really is to surrender in, if you're confident it's your deepest heart's desire and that your will is aligned with divine will. But then do some intentional work and plant some seeds and actively be in an active manifestation. But I really find the magic for me happens when I fully surrender into divine will and brace myself for even the hard things that may come.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is the thing with the spiritual journey that I always say to people, it isn't just about this kind of energy of light, because we still have to navigate the shadow to be able to hold the capacity of what the light brings,
Exactly.
Yeah, so I love this kind of this exploration that we've gone on with regard to the shadow element of it, and actually not being fearful of the shadow, because we can learn so much. Like, I regularly do intermittent work so when I'm doing my womb healings, I work with a guide. She's the guardian of the womb. She came to me in a beautiful ceremony, and it's this woman that's shrouded in all these red robes. She looks black, and the color of the robe against her skin is just piercing. But she brings with her the guardians or the midwives of the womb. So I find that fascinating that you've just described yourself as a midwife. I'm literally like, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God. I literally in my journeys with the womb, I work with the midwives.
Wow.
So how powerful.
It's so powerful. And I echo what you said. I think a midwife and a death doula, I think we need to function. If we're going to be functioning as one, we need to function as another, even as this whole paradigm, this society collapses, end stage patriarchy, end stage capitalism collapses. We need to be simultaneous midwives of the new and very intentional death doulas of what's dying, and I think that
Mm.
transpires for all the practices or the layers in between down to the personal.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I love it, Laura. And I suppose just as we're finishing up, so how do people get involved? Do they mainly navigate this through Instagram, or what's the best way to get in touch? And is there a couple of just summary points about key dates and when to get started?
Yeah, so I've documented everything on my Instagram. So my handle
Great.
is Everose, Everose. So go on to my Instagram, and all of my highlight reels are Omen days from each of the last couple of years. Go in and have a look at them, because you get inspiration for how to record them. And at the start of every highlight reel, I have an introduction. Every year, I kind of bring out some new revelations or a new way to perceive, or another layer of perception for the Omen days. And at the start of each highlight reel, you'll see the explanation. Or even maybe go down through my timeline and look for the posts on each year for the Omen days. Or you can do a search, hashtag Omen days on Instagram. Do a Google search for Omen days, because I think if you, like, ever since, so part of our tribe they've been so inspired, they've written blog posts on their journeys as well. So even type in Omen days, maybe my name might bring up some things, Kathleen Matthews. And then on those days, then if you're posting, or if you, some people don't like to post or share their things, keep an eye on what the community is doing. If you tag me on your stories or your posts, I will share, so that we have a central point to kind of track and keep an eye and share and everything. Or use the hashtag Omen Days, and I'll be sharing and we'll probably be collabing on some posts as well. And I'll be sharing your visions, as I have done last year. And if Regina is doing the tarot, we'll be sharing the tarot as well on stories.
Amazing, amazing. And so a couple of the key points that you've mentioned is tune in on December 20th,
Yeah.
and just imagine yourself going into the womb of the Kyloch. What are you letting go of at that darkest point of the year?
Yeah.
And then to sit in on December 23rd to really identify and observe your highest possible potential that you want to bring about for the year ahead. And so then the Omen days kick off. You start looking for your first Omen on December 26th.
Yeah.
And basically each of the 12 days afterwards corresponds to each of the 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
And then obviously sitting with the day of the Epiphany with what the overall theme that's coming through for you is it?
That's it. And
Brilliant.
on Rune Moore, the big secret of the Omen days is the 13th moon.
13th moon. Oh my God. I love it. Oh my God. Laura, I feel like I could literally just sit and chat to you all day. I've been just so touched by everything that you said, and the synergy. Oh, it's just amazing. So I'm so excited. The countdown is on to kick everything off now in the next couple of weeks. So of course, we'll be interacting so much then. And I hope everybody tunes in to Laura's Instagram. Obviously, I'm at the Intuitive Medic on Instagram as well. And we'll be going on our adventure. It's going to be so fun and amazing and inspiring.
Please. And then if people could share this episode, because that's kind of what happens. It's like one person shares with their friend, and it's a real organic word of mouth. So whoever is destined to be on this journey with us will come across this podcast. And this is the most I've ever spoken about the Omen days. So I think, it's a really great sign that there's going to be a nice wave of beautiful souls coming in from across the world. So do share with your soul tribe, and please join us. It's a really warm and heartfelt invitation from the heart of Ireland to come and join us on this journey.
I love it. I love it. Oh, Laura. Well, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of my hara, my sacral chakra. Thank you so much for being here. And I will look forward to the adventure over the next few weeks.
Same, Tony. Graw more to you.
Take care, my love. Thank you.